Hello everyone, and welcome back to JAS Reviews. My name is James, and on this channel I do reviews of both music and movies, along with the occasional commentary piece, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please be sure to leave a like on this video, and to subscribe to my channel to see more content like that. And today I am doing an album review, this time for the newest album from the metal/hard rock band Ghost, entitled Skeleta. So I have actually talked about Ghost on this channel in the past, specifically when I did a short album review on their previous album in 2022, Umbra, which has only grown on me over time. I remember I was decently positive on the album at the time, but I didn't love it, but now I do think it's actually a really good album. I know that it's one of Ghost's more controversial albums, to say the least. In fact, a lot of people say it is their weakest. In my opinion, actually, I think at the time I reviewed it, I probably would have said it was one of their weakest, but now I don't really agree with that. I actually really do like this album, and I don't think it's their weakest, personally. And while I do understand that some people miss their darker metal roots that they had on their first three albums, it wasn't too surprising to me the route that Ghost took on Umbra, because they were sort of building up to being that way on Prequel, whereas they're not delving into their more parody, satanic image that they had on their first three albums. Now they're going into more parody of and sincere appreciation as well, I think, of glam metal, power metal, and things like that. I was excited to see where they were going to go with Skeleta, and I'll admit the first two singles for this album had me very excited. It took me a little bit to warm up to the lead single, Satanized, but once I warmed up to it, I did really enjoy it. I find the chorus to be very catchy, and it is sort of what you've come to expect from modern Ghost, with having lyrics that are vaguely religious, but about a priest who is tempted by this relationship and feels like it's very forbidden for them and that they shouldn't pursue it, but they are anyway, and that they've been satanized by the relationship. It's obviously over the top, and it's obviously meant to be a little silly in places, but I think it's very fun. And I actually really like the second single, Lachryma. I think this one is more early Ghost sounding, and I think a lot of people liked it for that reason. This one was definitely well received by the fans, and I think deservedly so. The guitar riff in the song is excellent, one of my favorites from Ghost in recent memory, I think, and the chorus is just, I mean, absolutely irresistible. One of Ghost's most catchy. The way that Tobias sings out, "I'm done crying," is one of the most catchy moments of the year, I think, and I think this has potential to be one of my favorite songs of the year. I have not been able to stop listening to it. It is so much fun. But those were the only two songs I heard before the album, and so I was expecting overall a logical progression from Umbra. It seems like they were continuing on with that direction, and what did we get? Well, let's talk about it. So I think overall I was right in my assumptions that this was just going to be sort of a logical continuation from Umbra. You're not going to get anything necessarily surprising here. This is what you've come to expect from modern Ghost, and if you prefer their older, darker metal sound, maybe you won't be a big fan of this, but if you're someone like me who likes both sides of their sound, both the old version and the newer modern Ghost, then you're probably going to have a good time with this, and I would say I, in fact, had a great time with this. Now, do I like this as much as Umbra? I might actually say no, and I might actually say this is a bit of a weaker album, and I'll get into why in the critiques, but that doesn't mean that there aren't some great moments on here. The opener track, Peacefield, is excellent. It is an epic rocker, if ever there was one. When Ghost does these, they always do them very well, and I think this song is no exception. I do think this is one of Ghost's most positive albums. I actually think they ended on a very optimistic note, and they talk a lot more about more positive topics on here, which is not something that they've always done in the past, and that would be an understatement to say, but this album is definitely more upbeat, which I actually appreciated. I think it was a good change of pace while still keeping a lot of the same Ghost stuff that we've known. And then it leads very well into our next two lead singles, which are Lachryma and Satanized. And I've already talked about both of these two, but once again, I do think they work well in context of the album, and I think both of them are a great time for what they are. The next song is more of a power ballad and Guiding Lights, and while I don't like this one quite as much as Darkness at the Heart Part of My Love. I do think this one still works, and it is interesting lyrically, maybe one of the deeper songs on the album in the subject matter that it's going for, as Tobias Forge talks about seeing a friend going down a dark path and that he has tried to pull them back from that abyss, but they seem to not be able to listen, so he can only now sit back and watch with the hope that eventually they'll come back to who they once were. It is a pretty somber song, and I found it to be effective in what it was going for. The following song, De Profundis Borealis, is also pretty great. I really do like the way that the song uses keyboards, and it has some beautiful synth work in it too. I think it's definitely a very much so power metal feeling song, and I liked it for what it did. It's not one that intrigues me as much as some of the biggest highlights of this album, but I did have a fun time with it nevertheless. Cenotaph, the next song, is a prime example of what I mean when I say that this album is much more optimistic than what we've come to expect from Ghost, and this one actually ends up being one of my favorites from the album. I could see this one going severely underrated, but I really love it. I think it is a great sort of culmination of different things that Ghost has done, and it's a unique sort of spin on what they have done in the past. I think it's one of the most different feeling Ghost songs on the album, which is why I appreciate it. This song seems to be a very sweet honoring of someone that Tobias has lost, and the fact that while he can't see them right now, he still feels that they are with him no matter what in his consciousness and his mind. It's a very powerful song in that regard, and I think a nice way for him to commemorate someone who he's lost, and I think it's just a song that is hard to resist from that angle. And I do think that the album has a really good ending as well. I think Umbra is right up there with Lachryma for maybe my top favorite of the album. In fact, this one could take the top spot because this one is just so much fun to listen to, and it feels so much bigger than life, and purposefully so, I think, because the song is a celebration of love, and maybe of even a little bit of a heretical love as well, because it's very risque, and what it's talking about as these two people are literally making love in a church, which is considered to be something that is heretical, obviously. But I think the song has fun with it and really plays into it well, and I mean, I love how Tobias Forge delivers the chorus in particular. It is a very catchy chorus, and I mean, the big swings that the song goes for works well. It is such a great time, and I think Ghost really excel on this song. The whole band is firing on all cylinders. It's a great song with a lot of just awesome stuff going on with it, and I think it is sort of the perfect representation of what this album is, a sort of love letter to classic 80s rock. I wish we got more mainstream rock albums like this one, because this album does what a lot of mainstream rock is missing right now. It embraces the fun, it embraces sincerity in an over-the-top way, whereas I feel like so much of modern rock, mainstream rock specifically right now, is playing it a little too safe. And then the album ends off on, I think, a really good but simplistic note with Excelsis. Now, the song isn't necessarily simplistic in terms of length, because this song goes on for 6 minutes, but it doesn't really have that many musical shifts. It actually stays pretty consistent with what it is throughout. A nice, simple acoustic ballad with a little bit of synth flourishes and a small bit of a guitar solo, but the song stays on course for its runtime, and I think it works for the subject matter it's talking about, in Tobias talking about the idea of death and the uncertainty of it, but also encouraging us to love one another while we are alive, even if we are a little unsure and potentially even scared of what lies beyond the grave. I like that the song ends with that stark honesty of him saying that he's really not sure what lies beyond, and he's a little scared of it. I think it's a cool admission to happen at the end of the album, but there is also a little note of hope there in that, yeah, even if there isn't anything afterwards, even if we aren't sure if there is anything, let's still love each other while we can, and let's still be there for one another, because our time right now is very short, and we need to value it. And it actually feels like a sort of fitting ending to this trilogy of albums that Ghost has been doing since Prequel. I think this one is actually a pretty good way to parallel what was going on in Prequel with talking about death and maybe a much more dark way, with songs like Rats talking about the Black Plague, or the ending song Life Eternal, where Tobias begs someone to stay with him forever. And instead, in this song, he comes to a sort of arc realization that, yeah, there may not be a forever, there may not be that, but that's okay, because I want to be here for people right now. It's actually works pretty well, and I think it's rather poignant, and I really appreciated it for what it was doing. Now let's talk about a couple of the critiques I have for this album. I did really enjoy this album, so there's actually not much for me to complain about. I do think that sometimes the simplicity of the album can be a little bit of its detriment. The lyrics here are very stark and plain, and there's not really much to read between the lines in here, besides with the really good ending arc of Excelsis connecting to a bigger overall album arc that Ghost has been having for 3 albums now. But other than that, there's really not much deeper going on in the other tracks of this album. But there are some places where the over-the-top cheekiness can be a little bit too much. I think this is especially the case for songs 7 and 8 on the album. Marks of the Evil One, there's a part of me that wants to appreciate this song sort of like 20s, where it's just so silly and it knows that it's silly. But at the same time, it doesn't really fit in this album as much, and the chorus of the song is a little bit irritating, I feel like, just repeating there over and over. The song just sort of talks about the horsemen of the apocalypse, and I get the commentary that they're going for. They're actually making a commentary of people who want to look for evil in the world in every place, to a degree of almost paranoia, to where they're pointing out like, oh, there it is, or there it is, and that's not always the case. That there's not always evil where you're trying to look for it, or where you're trying to find it, and sometimes we need to stop being in that mindset. But I don't know, I still think the way it's executed in the song doesn't work as well as I would have liked it to. My least favorite actually comes in Missilia, Amori. The innuendos in this song are so obvious that it almost comes across as cringe, I think. And I don't know, it's weird to hear Ghost say something like love rockets. It just doesn't feel particularly fitting for them. And the song musically is a little bit plodding. I didn't really care for the very repetitive guitar work in the song, and at almost 5 minutes, it didn't really feel like it justified its length. It felt like a bit of an unnecessary length for the song to go when you really get the point about halfway through. Like I said, I don't think this one is quite as good as Impera overall. I do think Impera had some bigger, stronger moments, and I actually think Impera has some more memorable choruses in it. This one definitely has some memorable choruses for sure. I mean, it's not like there aren't catchy songs on here. I've already complimented songs like Lachryma and Peacefield and Cenotaph as being very catchy, but I do think that this album doesn't have as many moments that impacted me as songs like, for example, Watcher in the Sky or Spillways did on their previous album. But overall, I still don't think that Ghost have a bad album to their name. I think they are incredibly consistent, and I do think they are deserving of their popularity. It's nice to see a popular mainstream act embracing aspects of mainstream rock that can make it, yes, accessible, but also fun to listen to, and still feel creative and fun in how over the top it is. I like that Ghost is sort of unashamed to pursue that, and I think more bands should embrace that theatricality in the mainstream rock scene. I think it could be beneficial for everyone involved, but it is nice while we have them to see Ghost doing that, and I think this album is another example of them pursuing that sound to mostly positive effect. I'm going to be giving this one a strong 4 out of 5 stars. Hard to say whether it will be like one of my top 10. I doubt it will be that much, but it is one of my favorite albums that I've heard this year so far. So yeah, those were my thoughts on Skeleta by Ghosts. What were your thoughts on this album if you've heard it? Let me know in the comments down below. And once again, my name is James, and I do reviews of both music and movies, along with the occasional commentary piece, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, then please be sure to leave a like on this video, and to subscribe to my channel to see more content like that. But until then, I will see you all in the next video.